Oh, yeah, brothers and sisters. Now we're going to get Conspirinormal, right? Oh, yeah. Get your podcast ready. Brought to you by Slim Jams. 14 delicious original Slim Jams. We got Mr. Adam Sane here with Conspirinormal Podcast. Fielding your questions, answering your questions, making stuff up, but we're telling the truth. Oh, yeah. The way I like it. Macho Man, Randy Sad Face, Prince in the background, E.T. shirt, Mr. Tom Selleck, Slim Jims, Jaboo, Adam Sane. Oh, yeah. Give us a question, y'all. Give us a question and we'll give you an A. Oh, yeah.
All right.
Talk about
Hello, everyone. This is the first kind of thing that I've ever done like this. I'm over here wearing an alien mask. If y'all can hear me, I think I'm gonna take this thing off because it's a little hard to hear here. But I'm Adam Sane. I am actually Jason's cousin.
Oh, yeah.
Macho Man. I'm the Macho
Same
Man's
blood.
cousin.
Oh, yeah.
And
Retard
Jason,
ride. Anytime.
we go way back,
Oh,
man.
yeah. I'm broke down. Oh, yeah.
So Jason asked me to do this for the Jammin for Zach, I guess, benefit. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. So I'm Adam Sane. I am, like I said, Jason's cousin, and I am the host of the Conspirinormal podcast. And we're a podcast that has been around for about 8 years now.
Wow.
And we talk about conspiracy theory. We talk about the paranormal and just about anything under the sun that deals with really weird topics. So I'm here to answer questions, I suppose. Or if there's a question that you have, Macho Man, let me know. We got two people watching. We got one person watching right now. So.
Oh, yeah. 2 people, maybe 1 person. Oh, yeah.
Yes.
What inspired you to get into the podcast game?
Well, I had always wanted to. I'd always wanted to do a podcast, and got inspired by a few people that did it back in 2005 to the 2010 time period.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a few mentors that kind of helped me out along the way. And at about 2012, started my own podcast. I always kind of been into the paranormal and to also UFOs and conspiracy theories and all kinds of stuff. And in fact, Jason, let's tell our own little bit of our own little paranormal stories. How about we start off with that, and we'll see if any questions come in.
I'm down.
Okay. All right. So Jason this actually came up on another show that I did the other night. I talked about this. Now, Jason also lived in this house too, so he can maybe tell you his story. When I was a little kid, all right. Now, to set the story up, my father rented the same house that he grew up in, right? And Jason's mom is my father's sister. Okay. And what's that?
That's
So we were living in the same house that he grew up in. All right. Now that's very important for what's going to come later. And that house was probably built in the 1920s. My father lived in it probably the 1950s. Now, one night, this was back in the 1980s, I was asleep. I was about 7 years old. And I woke up and I looked in the corner to see this old lady sitting in the corner, or standing in the corner, was what I remember. Now, it was really weird because I kind of had this feeling of just I wanted to go back to sleep. even though it was really scary. Like, what is this old lady doing in my room, right? And there was this kind of like weird dream state that I went into where I kind of had this vision of like my grandparents' house burning down and just weird. It was really weird stuff. Okay. Now, when you're 7 years old, you see something like that, you know, you start thinking about other things because you're a little kid, right? It doesn't really linger, but you do kind of still remember it in the back of your mind. Now, when I was 14, we went to actually see my aunt, Jason's mom, in Virginia Beach, right? I
Yeah,
think you might remember that trip.
I
I
do.
was
Yeah.
about 14. I was about 14 years old. My mother and my aunt were talking to each other about weird stuff that they had seen inside that house. Okay, and my aunt looks at my mom and she says, when I was a little girl, I woke up in the middle of the night and I looked into your father and your uncle's room, which later on, 30 years later, was my room. And I saw an old lady sitting in the corner. Okay. And I looked at my aunt because I wasn't even part of the conversation. I looked at my aunt and I said, Jason's mother, I said, really? Because I saw an old lady in that house too. Okay. Now, we did later find out kind of like the history of that house. And we found out that there was an old couple before my grandfather, Jason and I's, both our grandfather, is his grandfather and my grandfather. When he bought the house, he bought it from an older couple. So I just kind of assume that that's what that was, that maybe that was the spirit of the old lady that lived in the house. I have no way of really knowing that. My mom actually had a weird experience in that place as well.
Huh.
She saw a little boy in the kitchen. And later on, she kind of told me that the little boy had old timey clothes on,
Huh.
but she actually thought it was me. And she went to touch this little boy in the kitchen and say, "Hey, what are you doing up?" And this little boy disappeared right in front of her eyes. Okay.
Wow.
So, that was a weird experience. Now, you told me not too long ago that later on when you guys moved from Virginia Beach back to
Yeah,
Chattanooga for a little bit, you had a weird experience.
we did. Yeah, we moved to actually the place my parents live at now. There was a different trailer there when we first moved there, one from the '70s, and our neighbors that are there now told us that they seen it was like an older couple that lived there, and they told us that they saw like pots and pans flying around the house one time, and they heard like a big commotion and all that kind of stuff, which they said was out of the norm because my parents bought it from a couple that were in their '70s, so they didn't really like do a lot of moving around, let alone throwing around pots and pans. That was like not something they usually do. So my neighbor said that that happened before we lived there, and we had a weird thing happen there. So the trailer when we bought it, like I said, it was a trailer from the '70s, and it's a trailer, so it was falling apart pretty well. And we had like roof damage. So when it would rain, it would actually rain in on the roof, and it would rain through the roof and like get the carpet wet or whatever. So what we did is we fixed it up as best as we could. But if it got real bad, what we would do, I remember one time we were leaving the house, so we took trash bags and we put that like over the bookshelf. So if it did rain, at least the books and everything in the bookshelf wouldn't get messed up. The water would hit the trash bag, whatever. But on the bookshelf, you got all the books, but on the top, my mom always put like knickknacks, stuff like that. And she had candles on the top of this bookshelf, right? So and we left for like a day to go shopping and get food and all that kind of stuff. When we came home, and it was raining, so we had the trash bag on, the thing, on the bookshelf. When we came home, the candle was lit. It lit underneath the trash bag that was over the shelf. So you got the bookshelf, you had the candle on top of that, it's on fire. You have a trash bag just on top of it. And it didn't make sense because we didn't, I mean, there's no way we would light a candle and leave the house. And then why would a candle not burn the trash bag and burn the whole, it's a trailer. So that, I mean, you would think that that would burn up, or there would be like a smell, or there would be some sort of, like some sort of reaction. And there was nothing. It was just a lit candle. It's really weird. I can't figure out the science behind that one. You know, if there is like a, you know, yeah, that's kind of unusual.
Yeah, that is really strange. What about the old house that I was in? Did you ever have any weird stuff happen in that one?
Mom said she heard like, you know, the old woman, you know. I remember like hearing things, you know, here and there, but I didn't really,
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
know, I don't know anything that stood out in particular. But we weren't there that long. We were only there for like, you know, a few months or
Yeah,
something.
yeah, it was
We
only a few months.
Yeah, we were moving around a lot.
But
So
the candle story is pretty crazy. Like, how in the world did that get
it's
lit?
weird.
So
Yeah. How long was it lit, and why did it not burn? You know, it's scary. Like you know, there's no
so
way. Yeah.
so tell me a little bit about this benefit, about this fundraiser that you're doing. And this will be for the people that are actually watching this on YouTube right now and on my Facebook page.
Okay. Yeah.
What's going on with this, just for like their benefit if they wanted to find out how to help.
Yeah. So I've been really lucky. I play my dad's music, and through that, I've been able to host a few shows. One of them is a place called Charlton's. It's on Saturday night, and at Charlton's, there's a guy named Derek Ferwada, and he's an incredible musician, incredible player, incredibly nice person. On Tuesdays, he hosts the open mic night they have there, and through that, I've gotten to know him. And his stepson is sick. He has a mesothelioma. I'm mispronouncing that, but it's a horrible disease that affects your breathing and your lungs. My dad has emphysema. My dad has COPD. So when he told me about this, it kind of, you know, touched my heart that he's dealing with this. And unfortunately, these are not diseases that we have cures for. There's not like things you can, you know, it doesn't get better. You know, there isn't. Maybe you can do a lung transplant, but then you got to have a lot of money. You also got to have the right body parts. You got to, you know, someone else's parts got to work with you. Just my dad is not in a position where he has even the option to do the lung transplant because there's a possibility that new lungs would kill him because his body wouldn't, you know, accept that or something like that. Like it's a serious problem. It affects a lot of people. Like obviously, he's in his 30s. Zach is in his 30s. That's what we're all doing this for. He's in his late 30s, and it's affecting him and his family, you know, significantly. And honestly, we don't know how much time he has. You know, it's not fair. He's in his late 30s, and he's in a worse position than my father is in his late 60s. And that's
Wow.
my dad's got emphysema and COPD. My dad he can't open a fridge without it affecting him. I mean, it's a legitimate. There's a whole generation of people that have been affected by this, and you know, we need to work together in any way we can to help each other out with this, because everybody knows someone that's affected by this kind of thing. There's a chance, you know, there's a chance that it'll affect us in the future. We don't know, you know, it's not just cigarettes, it's asbestos, it's lead poisoning. It's, you know, there's so many different things in the atmosphere that cause these different things. It's hereditary. These things can be hereditary, you know? So we want to help Zach. We want to help Derek, and we want to help, you know, raise awareness in this. And, you know, we got a bunch of wonderful people that are coming together and donating their time and performing for Zach. We're going to be doing it all day again tomorrow, starting at 11:30 a.m. And we're going to go again until 10 o'clock at night. And if you want to check out the Facebook group, it's called Jammin for Zach group. It's free to join. It's free to share. And in there, in the about information, you can see there's lots of different ways that you can donate to Derek through a PayPal, through a Venmo, and through a GoFundMe. So there's a lot of different ways out there. And yeah, if you got nothing else to do, you know, make sure you join us. We got a lot of great performers joining. So it's nice to be able to help out, you know, any way you can, I think. You know?
Yeah, if you're watching this on Conspirinormal Facebook page or you're watching it on the YouTube channel, you guys can go check that out as well. There's actually a group on Facebook called Jammin for Zach that you guys can get on, and you can see all these wonderful performances by all these wonderful people that have come together to help Jason out over the course of this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, definitely go and check that out. You'll see all the performances from yesterday and today, and because it's all going to be there on that Facebook group, correct?
That's right. We shared everything from yesterday. We started off at Charlton's Live. Yesterday we had a full day of music. We had a bunch of incredible people, and then we're going to be finishing it up tomorrow. It's going to be all day. Every 30 minutes we got a new performer. We got stand-up comedians performing. Tomorrow we got spoken word. We got Joe Peacock. He's a great writer. He's going to be joining us. And we got a bunch of great music. It's going to be incredible. If you look at the About section, you can find out a list of all the performers that have performed and are going to continue to perform. It's great.
Okay. Well, you guys may have noticed, if you're watching, that there is a ticker down at the bottom of the screen for a conference called Strange Realities 2020.
Oh, yeah.
Tickets are available at strangerealitiesconference.com. We are going to be doing, I and my co-host Raphael, who's not with us tonight, we are going to be doing that conference here within the next less than 3 weeks. And we've got several different people from the paranormal world, including some from the Atlanta area, which Jason is in, and most of the musicians that have been performing are in. And that includes a guy named Joshua Cutchin, who you guys should check out, David Metcalf, and Alan Greenfield, who I was just speaking to earlier, who was a occultist and the author of Secret Cipher of the Euphonauts. If you guys have seen Hellier, you might know what that is. So if you want to come check out that, 21 speakers going to be there, and we're charging only $20 for it. And we're actually going to be doing it on this platform on a secret private group on Facebook. So check that out at www.strangerealitiesconference.com. And all the little
last year. I'm excited to check out what's going on this year. It's gonna be cool.
You can guys can see the banner in the background. It's September 25th, 26th, and 27th. So guys, check that out. All right.
It was really cool. I learned a lot last year. It was really awesome to see how many different people came together, and I don't know. It's really
here's a person that's really excited about the conference. So, all right. Any questions out there from the audience? Or Jason, do you have Macho Man? Do you have any questions for me?
Do you have any paranormal wrestling stories you know about? I have plenty of wrestling conspiracies, but what about wrestling?
Not that I'm aware of, unless there's like a deceased wrestler. Deceased wrestler haunting somewhere in like some auditorium or something.
Man, that would be a good storyline.
I do know that where I used to live in Hermitage, Tennessee, Tojo Yamamoto.
Oh yeah, that was our grandfather's favorite wrestler.
Yeah, he actually committed suicide. Not to get too morbid here, but he actually committed suicide in an apartment complex that I know pretty well. I found that out like last year. Yeah. He lived there, and that was in 1992 that happened.
Nice.
So
that's too bad. That's too bad. Wrestling stuff. Like, I used to be in wrestling for a long time. A lot of people are kind of, got to think of injuries and everything. You deal with the pains and all that kind of stuff. I had a weird wrestling situation kind of happen with a guy that committed suicide. There's a guy, let's see, what was his name? I think he went by Chris Canyon. He was like kind of well known. He was like in WWE and a bunch of different things like that. And I remember I was at Hooters watching WrestleMania, because that's what you do, because you don't want to spend $60 on WrestleMania. So you go to Hooters in Newnan, Georgia. That's where I went. And I went there, and I went to the restroom, and he was like peeking, and it was kind of awkward, like at the urinal kind of thing. And it turned out that he ended up killing himself. And I think part of it was because he was, I don't know, something about getting out, something about he wasn't, because it's such a tough industry, like he was gay, and I don't know all the details, but he had problems with that. He like wasn't honest with himself, and he used to hide a lot of stuff. It's kind of weird to see, you know, it's a shame that it happened. He was a really talented wrestler, I remember, but it's like, I don't know. There's a lot of different wrestlers or entertainers and actors, and I think a lot of people in the arts usually probably have a lot of torment, kind of. And if you can't work with that, in an easy way, you got to figure out a way that works for you, not to succumb to stuff like that. Wrestling's tough because also the injuries. There's so many people. I get a lot of injuries too, and I did more managing than wrestling. So I can imagine Tojo, who did it at that time. They're doing it 7 days of the week, every week. Literally hour a day. Ric Flair. It's like,
yeah, he was probably in his 60s or something when he died. So I mean, think about all the time that he had, like the hell that he had put on his body.
Yeah.
Like yeah. I can imagine that would have been pretty bad. I mean, I know someone that I worked with, that fairly young guy. I mean, his mid-20s, and he was already putting his body through hell being a wrestler.
Yeah.
So
I knew a
yeah,
guy that died at 26 in wrestling. He also doing it.
It's crazy. I mean, I'm not like, too into it, but it's just like you really kind of got to respect these guys for doing what they do. I mean, it's like it's its own world, essentially.
Yeah, it's true. And it's I don't know, it's crazy because sometimes like I know a lot of guys that are like into hardcore wrestling, and they don't think that they've done a good job unless they're like bleeding all over the place or something like that. And it's like, man, if you get used to so many different things, like what's next? You need a meat cleaver next. Now you need this. Now you need that. Now it's like, kind of got to be careful with it.
Well, here's a wrestling conspiracy for you, and I guess a little bit of true crime. I watched this documentary. What is it, like The Dark Side of the Ring? I think the only one that I watched was about, who was the guy that killed his wife and his family?
That's Chris Benoit.
Chris Benoit. And they talked about that condition where like so many blows to the head that it makes you crazy, and like a lot of that stuff has kind of been not as well spoken about in like the wrestling world, and it's kind of covered up by the promoters and the people that do it. So
yeah, he was like really big on steroids too. You get to, like, I actually went to a WCW Thunder. He was with a few different wrestling companies, and I went there with a friend, and him and Psycho Sid like fought all over the arena to the point they were fighting like in the audience, right? So they like come up in the audience, and me and my friend are just like sitting there. It was like at the end of WCW, so we bought tickets that we could afford, which were way up in the nosebleed. But like, because they wanted the cameras, it was like a televised event. They wanted it to look good. They actually told us to all come down to make it look like. So we had like really good like ringside kind of seats, which we typically wouldn't have unless they told us to come down. So these guys, Psycho Sid and Chris Benoit, start fighting each other, and they come up and they start beating on us, like not hitting us, but like they're fighting in that area, and everybody's like getting away. And like Chris Benoit, like I was surprised, like I didn't stand up right next to him exactly, but I'm like 5'8", right? And this guy's like way tinier than me, but this guy's like so much wider than me. He's like a mini fridge. And it's all because of the roids and everything, It's like, you can tell that guy was like so jacked up, So I'm sure that had mental effects, especially because he would take chair shots to his head directly. He's another one of those guys that like gave it his all, and if he didn't feel like he gave it his all, he kind of felt like he let the industry down, Which is, it's tough. That's a tough. It's a tough industry because I remember there's a lot of guys I worked with that like kept it. They have it called kayfabe, and it's like you keep it so real. Like back in like the 50s, 60s, like the bad guys and the good guys were never seen together, even though they were friends. They weren't allowed to because it could mess up the atmosphere, the storyline. You know, with the internet, I don't think it's as big of a deal now because people like they know what the storyline is going to be before it's on television. You know, they already got the scripts and everything. It's like crazy how people find that kind of stuff. So it's not the same deal, but like some of those guys, like Chris Benoit, was real like respectful of that, that kind of industry. So he would like take the chair shot that maybe somebody else wouldn't. I don't know. It's tough because he was a great wrestler, but man, it's like crazy to like they removed all of his stuff from WWE. Like they don't talk his name anymore. Like
yeah, they pretty much just like erased him from history, essentially.
yeah,
that in and of itself was crazy too, right? I mean, he did a terrible thing, obviously, but it was just kind of like, and that was kind of the gist of that documentary. Did they kind of sweep all that under the rug? Did they just not want to face that, they basically essentially damaged this guy to the point that he did this like crazy thing that was never going to be taken back with, killing his family. I mean, it's just insane to even think about. Like they've got a lot, I think, to answer for in that too.
Yeah.
They weren't, and I think that was the point of that documentary, that it wasn't just like, him himself. Like they had a certain amount of blame for it as well. So,
yeah.
Well, I'm not seeing any questions come across.
Huh.
I guess no one wants to know. So,
No,
do you have any? Are there any any other questions that you'd like to field, Macho Man?
Well, what is your favorite story you've heard so far? Do you have one?
My favorite story that I've heard so far.
Yeah, in all of your podcasting.
Okay,
which is over 300 episodes, right?
330 today, actually.
It's pretty impressive.
Man, I mean, there's so many. Like, there's one cool story that I had from a guest that I had on, and she actually wrote a book. Just about everybody that I've had on has written a book about something one way or the other in this field, and it was a crazy story about her working in a bar. Okay, and she had this drunk guy sitting at the bar, and it was somebody she knew. It was a regular, and then all of a sudden he just kind of comes up with this whole like different persona. Like his mannerisms change, his voice kind of changes a little bit. He starts he starts to curse a little more, and he starts asking her for tequila, more tequila, more tequila, and he just drinking tequila left and right, and he starts getting up and dancing, and then making a fool of himself, and then he sits back down, and then all of a sudden he changes, right? Mm-hmm. And she asks him later what happened, and he said, I don't know. I've been sitting here the whole entire time. So long story short, it kind of came to this idea that her thought was like, this was like a spirit that entered into his body and took it over for just a little bit, because he was sitting at a bar and he was drunk, and that happened.
Wow.
And so the spirit came into him as somebody that didn't have a body anymore and wanted to drink a little tequila and get a little rowdy. So that was one that I thought was interesting. We do have a question. So what topics will be discussed at the Strange Realities Conference?
Yeah.
Guys, we have several that are being discussed at this thing. I can tell you UFOs are part of it. Okay, that's going to be a big part of it. We've got one person talking about UFOs in the Bible from like an ancient aliens perspective, and we have another person that's talking about UFOs and aliens as demons, which was somebody that was there last year, that you may remember, Jason.
Oh yeah.
And we're gonna have a few people talking about different kinds of conspiracy theories. We're gonna have one Aaron Gullius. He's going to talk about conspiracy theories from like a positive perspective. Okay, so that's going to be pretty interesting. I've got my good friend Dr. Future.
Dr. Future.
That's going to be talking aspects from his new book, Two Masters and Two Gospels. That's gonna be there. So there's gonna be the more like kind of conspiracy theory stuff mixed in. I've even got someone talking about true crime, a true crime case that unsolved murders in St. Augustine, Florida. She's going to be talking about that. I've got somebody talking about a flat Earth conference they went to. This person was also there. Bigfoot is going to be mentioned, I'm sure, once or twice. And there's also two presentations for two different people that are giving essentially the same presentation, part 1 and part 2. They're going to be talking about folk magic and the influence of the paranormal on folk magic and vice versa. And even we have a presentation about pamphlets and weird, like he calls them grimoires, but they're like these weird self-help books that allows for people to, like, do exorcisms and conjure up demons and all kinds of weird stuff in like gas stations that people can find. Okay, we've even got somebody talking about that. And we have this guy, Macho Man, over here. He's going to be helping out on Sunday. So
Sunday fun day. Oh yeah.
That's right. Got another question here. What do you think about the conspiracy of the military-industrial complex staging an alien attack in order to forward their agenda to take control of humanity? Possible. If you've ever read Watchmen by Alan Moore, not the movie version, but the comic version, the graphic novel, that is a huge aspect of that. Yeah. A lot of people have talked about that. I think Richard Dolan, huge ufologist, has talked about something like that, about that possibly happening. A lot of people say Werner von Braun, the great the German rocket scientist, the guy who basically the former Nazi who founded Huntsville as it is today. He apparently had speculated towards that. So, yeah, I mean, it's a possibility. A lot of it may more have to do with like kind of psychological warfare operations than it has to do with any idea of taking over humanity, but that's a possibility.
What's the closest?
Thank you for the question.
Yeah, that's a good question. What's the closest evidence we have to something like that happening?
Yeah, somebody says Von Braun said Russians, terrorists, aliens. I think it was going to be in stages, so that could be a possibility. I think the only closest evidence we really have of something like that is maybe something like that's been written in some kind of government file somewhere, or some kind of like possible military program. I don't think anything like that's ever actually happened. So that might be the only thing that could say that maybe people have thought about this and not actually have done it. But just the fact that they thought about it is weird enough. So,
wonder if it would be something to do with computers, since that brings us all together, but it also divides us all.
Well, yeah, it divides us a lot. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's crazy. We haven't figured it out. They're gonna look back at us in like 1,000 years, and they're gonna see like, what did they didn't know how to do social media. Like all they did was they took it to fight. Like Twitter's a good example of that. Like the only emoji you can do is a heart, but that social media project is known more for their hate than anything else, right?
Yeah,
that's weird that it's like set up like that.
Yeah, it's very weird.
Yeah. So I got snap into a Slim Jim. Oh yeah.
Do we want to take it up for more questions, or we want to keep going? Like, what do we want to do?
Bring them on in. Let's do some questions. We got some more.
Not yet, not yet.
No?
Some people got to ask some questions here.
Oh man. All right.
Give
What's
us
the best bad movie you've seen this year? Question goes to
the
you.
best bad movie I've seen this year. Oh my god, I've seen so many.
I know you don't want
So, I'll tell you, the worst thing I've seen this year is courtesy of my good friend Doctor Future. It's a movie called Street Soldier,
it. Ooh.
and it was made sometime in the '80s, filmed completely on VHS. The dialogue is completely unintelligible, and it was made by a guy who was super into bodybuilding.
Nice.
So I don't know if you'll ever find it. It was something that he used to make his own bad movies, and
Mhm.
it was something that he had on like VHS that he transferred over the DVD that he showed me. So good luck finding it, but it is an incredible piece of garbage.
Man, I hope I can find that on Laserdisc.
You might be able to find it on
I
Laserdisc.
got it, y'all.
What
I
is
got
your
the Holy
take on
Grail.
the what is your take on the Tunguska event? Okay, the Tunguska event was this something fell from the sky in Russia in 1908 and made something like that was kind of like a nuclear blast.
Hmm.
I personally think that it was just comet that a small comet that possibly that exploded in midair but it was enough to cause a whole lot of damage, and thank God that it didn't actually that it fell in the middle of Russia and not like in the middle of a populated area, because it would have killed a whole bunch of people. But
Okay.
it kind of became mysterious because it wasn't really investigated until like the 1920s, and by then a lot of the vegetation had grown back, but they could still see the trees like laid out in
Hmm.
the middle of the laid out in like a perfect circle. And
Okay.
later when Hiroshima happened, the nuclear bombings, they saw that they thought that a lot of the um, a lot of the aspects of Hiroshima and Nagasaki were similar. So a lot of people speculated, oh, it must have been some kind of nuclear weapon or something like that. I'm not sure what the Valley of Death is in Siberia. I don't know. I don't know what that is. If that's something similar, please enlighten me. I do know about some other weird Russian stuff from the same time period.
What else is there?
Dyatlov Pass was something that was also strange, where there were some during the Soviet era, there were some Russians that went out to this remote area of the Ural Mountains, and they all kind of died like these mysterious deaths. And some people have speculated that they were attacked by aliens or they were attacked by some kind of Bigfoot like creature, something like that. So I'm not
Is
sure
there?
what the Valley of Death. I'm not sure what the Valley of Death is. You got me there. I really haven't heard about that one.
I don't know about that one either. Is there records of those mysterious deaths?
Yeah,
Like
yeah, it's a
what?
fairly famous case. It's called the Dyatlov Dyatlov Pass incident. I've
Okay.
never actually talked about it on the show, but other podcasts have.
Hmm.
And
What's
some people think that it was just like they went kind of crazy or they had like hypothermia, but other people didn't know. Valley of Death contains cauldrons that cause illness.
really?
Okay. Not not sure. unless you're talking about like the methane pools in the middle of Siberia.
Causes
Not, I'm not sure about all that, but that's interesting. That's something I might have to check out. So you've enlightened me.
All right. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. So I don't know. Any more questions? Anybody else got anything else?
Bring it on in. Let's do it. Talk about wrestling stuff too. Oh yeah.
Well, you always want to talk about wrestling stuff, man. I mean,
Yeah, I can always, yeah. Great art form. You know the reason why they're called marks, you know what wrestling marks are? You ever heard of the term marks for wrestling? It's like a super, all right, is what a mark is, right? And the reason why they call them marks is back in the days of carnivals and stuff like that, when that's all we had before television was invented, and people would go to carnies, you know. Carnies would mark people, all the suckers that they thought that they were suckers as they were like going by and stuff like that. And then that's why they ended up calling marks. It's like pretty crazy.
You really looked into the history of this, man.
Oh yeah, I really enjoyed it. I mean, it's a great art form. I think. I mean, really, it's saved television a few times. You know, wrestling. You know, it's been a great art form. You know, people knock it, but I mean, how much reality TV is out there? You know, I mean, it's fun. You're allowed to be like against someone, and you should know that it's a show, and it's just like but that's when it's fun. When you know that you're some guy's going to give you a hard time or something like that. But it's a fun thing and it's a safe thing. It's cool. We got any more questions?
Somebody says wrestling is like UFOs. Not sure if they are real.
That's why it all goes together.
Yeah. Well, we can talk about. You want to talk a little bit about UFOs?
Yeah. Let's say, as far as a UFO, what is the most? I mean, there's thousands and millions of stories, I'm sure, but what's the one that like seems the most legit? The one that like, okay, maybe we got, it can't be the Roswell tape, right? Like where they're doing the alien inspection. That's like fake, right? It turns out. So, what is the most realistic thing we have?
The most realistic thing that we have. I could tell you some like really compelling. The compelling cases that I think are pretty interesting are just plain weird. See, I'm of the point of view that you've got the main hypothesis for UFOs, right, is called the extraterrestrial hypothesis. That means that UFOs are manned by some kind of aliens or some kind of physical aliens. Yeah, Dave Altman says Nimitz, the Nimitz encounter. Okay, I'll go for that. That's a fairly recent thing, happened in 2004. Okay. That was sighted by some guys in planes that were flying from the USS Nimitz off the coast of San Diego. And that's something that came out in 2017 around that time period. And it's pretty compelling footage. They call it the Tic Tac video because it looks like a Tic Tac. Right?
Really?
That's what people said. It looks like a giant flying Tic Tac, and it's anomalous. Nobody knows really what it is. And the interesting thing is that there was a study inside. It was actually done by a private group and by a U.S. senator to study some of these sightings, and they came out and said that it was an absolutely anomalous. They didn't know what it was. So really where it stands right now, as far as like the military and the government, as far as like unidentified flying objects, or some people call them UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomenon. That's a new acronym for them.
Mm.
They said that those are they're actually genuinely anomalous instead of just trying to say that it doesn't exist. One of my favorite cases is one called the Cash Landrum case, and this happened in 1980. And these two women and their one of them had the grandson with them. They got out of they saw a light in the sky, right? And they
Okay.
got out, and this was somewhere in Texas. They got out, they looked up in the sky, and very, very close to them, hovering over the ground, was this kind of like diamond shaped uh craft, right? And it had all these helicopters circling around it, like military helicopters.
Hmm.
All right. And they could feel like the warmth literally coming from this thing. Okay. And when they got home, they went to bed and they got up the next day and they started having like rashes and the hair started falling out. They had like pretty much what was like kind of similar to like a radiation sickness.
That's what it sounds like. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was a case that like, obviously there was something going on there with with this whatever this craft was, that it could have been some kind of genuinely secret aircraft that the military was using at the time. So that's one of the most compelling cases to me, because there's like almost like a physical trace left literally on these women's bodies. Okay. Somebody asks here, what's up with Skinwalker Ranch? Good question. What is up with Skinwalker Ranch? I know that's become real popular recently because of the TV show. But there was a book that was written by a guy named Colin Kellenhare and George Knapp back in the 2005, called A Hunt for the Skinwalker, which is an absolutely chilling and great book to read. You guys should
Okay.
check it out. A lot of weird stuff a lot of strange stuff has gone on in Skinwalker Ranch, right? People have seen UFOs, they've had poltergeist activity, they've heard weird like machine like sounds underneath the ground.
Where
That
is
is
Walker Ranch?
this is in Utah, okay? And people and one of the most interesting stories from that book is when this family that bought this ranch, they got there, okay? They were setting up, moving in, whatever. And there was this like large wolf started to come up towards them, right? Okay. And they actually, it was bigger than a normal wolf would be. Like, I mean, wolves are huge, right? They're a lot bigger than Prince back there.
That's true.
And
That, that,
they'd swallow Prince whole.
yeah.
So they go up, and like this weird creature lets them pet them. Okay. Lets them pet this thing, and they're completely perplexed as to what is going on, and they had their cattle with them, and the cow made a movement, and all of a sudden this animal just lurches for this cow, right? So
Uh-huh.
they're like, "Oh shit, we got to get this thing off," So these guys, they got rifles, guns, they start shooting this animal. This thing hardly flinches at all. Okay? They
Uh-huh.
don't know, like they put several bullets in it. It hardly flinches, and then it just gets up and it just like walks away, right? Well, later on, they, I guess, find out somehow. I think they looked in a book or something. I don't remember quite the specifics of it, but they find out that this creature was a dire wolf. which is, you've heard of dire wolves because of Game of Thrones, right? Okay.
Yeah.
But dire wolves were larger than normal wolves, but they'd also been extinct for 10,000 years.
Wow. At
So
that point,
where did it come from?
that's crazy.
Yep.
Wow. Do they
Absolutely
have
crazy.
bones? Do they have any did they find a skeleton or something like
No,
that?
no, just disappeared. They would see these animals several times.
Uh-huh.
I think that's the reason why it was called a skinwalker, because of like those animals, and then also uh then these animals were also seen sometimes, but also there's the Native American lore about the skinwalker that's around the area. Okay.
It's a Utah
So
myth or Utah, not myth, but I guess is that considered like a mythology kind of thing?
yeah, you could say that. You could say that. But the idea of the skinwalker is this, it's like a werewolf, right?
Mhm.
But it's like a Native American version. In other words, a skinwalker can become human, and it can also be an animal at certain times.
Now, is that
Um,
American lore or is that like a Mormon lore kind of thing?
it's Native American.
Okay.
Now, uh, the question about what it is, I think that Skinwalker Ranch has real genuine activity on it. Now, whether the show really hypes it up, I don't know. But they have there's a real genuine activity that goes on there. And it's just one of these weird places, right? That for some reason something right happens. Maybe it's something that's in the ground or whatever. Who knows? But it just causes weird shit to happen. And
Yeah.
that's another interesting thing about UFOs and people that have alien contact and alien abduction experiences.
Yeah.
They can uh people, there's a school of thought that thinks, oh, this is physical. Actual aliens are coming all the way from outer space, and they're actually abducting people, and they're actually taking them in the spacecraft, and they're doing tests on them and all this kind of stuff, right? Well, there's another idea about this. Jason, you got to hear some of these ideas when you were in Nashville at the Strange Realities conference last year, because that's what he's wearing, by the way, is the shirt from that.
That's it.
And
Yeah.
that's
Macho Man.
it. Yeah, that's
Oh, yeah.
it. And so there's also an idea called the non-ETH. In other words, like this is like a physical. This is like a non-physical. These are non-physical entities. They come from probably somewhere that's more like quote unquote interdimensional, right?
Mhm.
And they've always been here on this planet with us. They're analogous to something like fairies or the jinn. And a matter of fact, Joshua Cutchin, who spoke last year at Strange Realities and is going to is speaking this year, talks about in several of his books the similarity between aliens, fairies, and Bigfoot. Okay, and
Really interesting.
if you really look into the lore and the mythologies behind all three, this is part of, you begin to see the similarities. You begin to think, well, there's way more that's going on here than some physical beings coming from outer space. And
Yeah.
it gets more interesting. Another thing that's interesting is people that have, and I'm going to get to another question here in a second.
Okay.
People that have gone and done something like ayahuasca, which is a very powerful hallucinogenic drug.
The
They
one that
can
cures you of other
also,
drugs. Right?
what's that?
That's the one that cures you of other drugs, supposedly, right?
Yeah, yeah, I can. Yeah, like, Joe Rogan has talked about it several times, stuff like that. So that those people will have these experiences where they encounter similar entities that are encountered in alien abduction. Like they'll see grays, they'll see reptilians, they'll see creatures that look like praying mantises, those type of beings. they will actually see them, and they will have experiences with these beings where they go places with them. But we know, and the people at the lodges know that give them these drugs, that those people are there physically, but they're having something that's akin to an out of body experience. Okay. So that's another aspect of it that I find really interesting. And my thing is like, how can this be physical when it's something that, when the similarities are there between the people that are ingesting this large amount of DMT and people that are having alien abduction experiences? Okay. Somebody asks Lou Elizondo, searching for the truth or forwarding the military industrial complex or military industrial complex agenda? I'm going to say both. I think that he's honestly searching for the truth, and he's also serving the military industrial complex because he is a military guy and also an intelligence officer. And I think that that's probably, I think it's probably both. That would be my answer to that. He's kind of a controversial figure, especially within the UFO community, because there's people that love him and people that hate him. I'm kind of neutral on him.
Okay.
I don't feel like he's doing any real damage. But one of the things that you guys got to try to remember about some of this is that there's been a lot of disinformation over the years regarding UFOs and regarding flying saucers, aliens, all that stuff. So I think that with the beginning of the modern era of ufology or UFOs is 1947. And that's also the year, really the beginning of the Cold War. And I think that UFOs have always served as a way, not to say that there's nothing, not to say that there isn't anything genuinely anomalous that's going on, but I think that they have been used as a cover by the military to have, so if they're flying these secret flights, they can just tell people, oh, what you saw you must have just saw a UFO. Okay.
Yeah.
People would see the SR-71 Blackbird or the stealth aircraft, and they could just say, well, UFOs are out there. It's unidentified flying objects. So that's what you saw. And I think that that's what's going on now with some of these groups, like To the Stars Academy, Tom DeLonge, former guitarist for Blink 182, if you guys are familiar with him. To turn it kind of back to music a little bit, he has been a big part of that, and is possibly, his organization is possibly a big part of that. I think what's going on right now is the militarization of space. Okay. And that's something that's moving forward, especially now since we have like the Space Force, right?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
On Netflix.
And some of these anomalous craft could be either ours or somebody else's that's on this planet. So there's possibility. There's all kinds of room of possibility because we're really dealing with things that are really murky here. We're not dealing with something that is clear necessarily. I think it's purposely left unclear for that reason.
And so let me ask you this. And it does seem like that, and it always has seemed like that. And there's always people seem like they know it, everything, and then they're considered crazy. Or do you think we're gonna eventually, as a society, as humans, agree that we should work together and figure this kind of thing out, and not judge each other and not listen to
them? I think though we need to listen to all points of view though. I'm a pretty radical non-ET extraterrestrial hypothesis guy. I don't think there's any aliens coming here, but there could be. I mean, we don't know. But I'm not going to say that that's not true.
Yeah.
But I will say that it's highly unlikely. but I think we need to listen to the other points of view as to say, like, there's a lot more going on here. And actually, in my mind, the interdimensional aspect of it and these possibly being beings that have been here on this planet that have kind of shared the same space with us for thousands, if not millions of years, and that we can access through some kind of out of body experience or some kind of mystical experience, I think is way more fascinating to me than, aliens coming from Zeta Reticuli and stealing sperm. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just my thought on it.
Yeah.
Someone has a good point here. 1947 was the beginning of the USA UFO phenomenon. There are rumors, theories that both Germany and Italy acquired UFOs prior to World War II. Possibly because you had the Foo Fighters back in the 40s. That is a possibility. There's definitely been science fiction movies about that. It's also possible that the Germans, and we know that they were actually working on saucer shaped aircraft, which
Yeah.
later on we kind of started working on that too.
Yeah.
Um,
Do you think that
the
that was
mil-
a fear tactic? Possibly like if they make saucer ships, right? And then they also have their standard ships that we all know, like, okay, so that's the standard airplane. That's like, but if they created this other thing and then they just make it real mysterious and don't talk about it or anything like that, then it's going to become even more mysterious. And then you can use that as a way for diversion is it possible that they just,
yes, yeah, yeah. I think that's kind of what I'm saying too. Is just like that they've definitely there's been a concerted effort to cover up and to have disinformation about flying saucers so that people would look into other areas, such as if you're looking for aliens coming from a distant solar system, then you're not looking at what the military is flying in the sky.
yeah,
Okay. Uh, so I also said, I think the same person here says the military tested flying saucers in the 40s and 50s. I've seen one of the prototypes in a military museum. Yes, that's true. I believe it was called the Avro car. It didn't get very high off the ground,
okay,
as far as I know. But like, look, man, I mean, imagine if you're like in the 60s or even if you saw the SR-71 Blackbird, you'd think that was a UFO, right?
yeah,
If you saw the stealth in like the 1980s before they really revealed it uh, in action in the first Gulf War, you would have thought that was a something from another planet.
yeah. I mean,
So
yeah,
like the military could just sit there and say, "Well, yeah, that's what you saw. It must have been something from another planet." Yeah, that's it. That's the ticket.
yeah.
So yeah, and then last year you mentioned Roswell. Last year at the Strange Realities conference, Guy Malone, good friend of mine who does conferences out in Roswell, New Mexico,
Good dude.
and he actually lives there, and he's from the Nashville area. He gave a presentation about Roswell, what really happened. And his basic idea is that what crashed in the New Mexican desert in 1947 was some kind of test craft that had actually been designed by escaped Nazi scientists. And if there were bodies, if there were, it's key there, then it could have been children that had like progeria.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, he showed like a diagram of like, the alien autopsy alien that we're all pretty familiar with the bigger head kind of thing. And if you compare it, you could see, especially if you didn't know, if you don't know that, we know what that is now. You didn't know that potentially.
So the point here is we had stealths going on over in Virginia Beach. No one knew what the hell they were. That's a good point. That's a very good point.
When was this? I'm
This
actually
was
from
this is probably back in the 80s because they didn't
there.
actually like I said they didn't actually reveal it till the first Gulf War. Uh what do you make of Admiral Byrd's experience and Bob Lazar? That's a damn good question. Uh, okay, Admiral Byrd, basically the basics of that is that he went down to Antarctica and apparently he encountered UFOs that were built by Nazis. I think that that is a bit of creative writing. I don't think that that ever actually happened. That's just my opinion. I don't think that uh, that that he encountered Nazis in the bottom of the world in Antarctica. However, then you have to ask yourself the question: why would somebody make something like that up, right? So I think that that probably was again some kind of disinformation campaign to try to get people possibly to think of it in that way, and to maybe not to deflect from what we were actually doing with Nazi scientists here in the United States. Okay,
Is there much heard
but
stories of oh,
go
continue.
ahead, go ahead.
I've heard stories of like South Africa after World War II. There was a lot of like German silverware and like a lot of people are saying that like Germans went there. Is there much
Yeah,
UFO like documentation and creation from there after the war?
but I'm not sure. I'm sure that there is UFO sightings in South Africa, though. I mean, it's a very large country. I
Yeah.
mean, it's kind of like Brazil. You hear a lot about that in Brazil as well. Brazil's a huge, huge UFO hotspot.
Hmm.
Um, Bob Lazar, I think, is a whole different matter. So Bob Lazar, for anybody that doesn't know, was a guy that claimed to have been a physicist, and he claimed to have worked at Area 51 back in the 80s, and he claimed to have seen in the underground base. He claimed to have seen these craft that were being worked on. Okay, and then he had this whole weird thing about this like weird element called 113 that apparently he handled or something like that. I think Bob Lazar is telling the truth as he understands it.
Hmm.
I don't think that he I think he was shown something to make him believe that it was real. Some kind of mock up, or maybe it was a way to kind of mess with his mind, because then you kind of get into like MK Ultra and mind control stuff. So, yeah, thank you, Matt. That was 115.
And
Um,
that's kind of crazy that comment about the stealth bombers. Like I'm actually from Virginia Beach, and it like I'd forgotten about that, but it seems like I remember stealth bombers flying over our neighborhood one time when I was a kid. I remember there's another weird thing in my neighborhood. Like when I grew up in my neighborhood, it was like 5 apartment complexes all around each other. Actually, a couple weird things. I found a dead body once. That was crazy. But there was like five apartment complexes all around each other, and then they had like a bunch of woods, like a massive amount of woods, right? So like me and the neighborhood kids, we'd hang out in the woods because that's what you do. You go, run these woods were great. They were all cool. So I remember me and my friends went back in the woods one time, and we went like real far back in the woods. And we found like an old railroad track, but it was like it was really really old. There was only pieces of it that were left, right? Like half of the building was gone. There was no roof. I mean, it was just like this of a building and this of a building, but you could tell it was a railroad track, right? So we found that, and that was weird. And then we kept walking like into the woods, and we found like this real long path, right? And we saw a tank driving by, like an actual tank. And then we all got scared, and we were like, I don't know whether this is weird. We need to get out of here. But I remember seeing the tank. We were like, we need to. Like they kept going. Actually, I left. I was like, we can't. I don't know what's
there's a
next. So,
lot there's a lot of military presence in that area.
yeah, yeah,
There's a ton. I mean, your dad used to work on the Navy ships, right? In the
he
yard.
did.
So
Yeah, the shipyard. Yeah, he did the
like,
drop.
yeah, I think that was Norfolk. So like, I mean, there's a ton of military presence there.
Yeah.
It's kind of like San Diego. I mean, San Diego is the same way. You've constantly got aircraft moving through and ships and all kinds of stuff. So it wouldn't surprise me too much that there would also be Army there in Virginia Beach. It's mostly Navy, I'm sure, but
Yeah.
Uh,
It was the first thing. It was crazy. I went back there like 15 years later, and that whole the woods had been completely demolished.
Yeah.
Like more buildings and
Yeah.
stuff.
There was probably something going on. They might have been doing some military exercises or something like that.
Seems like it. Yeah, it was weird seeing that railroad track too, like that old. Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, Bob Lazar, I think, was shown something possibly. It could have been an experiment that was being done on him. It could have also been a disinformation campaign that was being done on him. I think he believes what he saw. I think he's sincere, but I don't think what he saw was necessarily a real alien spacecraft. He may have been duped into believing it was, or maybe he wants to believe it is. I don't know. But he's kind of controversial himself too. So among the UFO crowd. So,
How so?
some people doubt his claims, some people don't.
Okay.
That's just kind of how it is. Do you think the Tic Tac craft is military, Air Force, and the Navy is unaware? I think it could be military. I think it could be something that were flying at that time. That's a good point about it being Air Force instead of Navy, and the Navy just didn't know. It's possible. I mean, you got all that like inter-military rivalry, so maybe that had something to do with it.
Possible it's something else like Elon Musk or like one of these, entrepreneurs that makes their own, whatnots kind of thing.
Yeah, could be. I'm going to probably have a chance at some point to talk to one of the guys that was actually on the plane that saw it. So I'm looking really forward to that here coming up on the show. So yeah.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
Do you find like are some people like scared to be on the show to talk about this kind of stuff? Is it like?
No, not really. I mean, a lot of people they usually that a lot of the people that I talk to are authors that are seriously into all this kind of stuff, and they really they're going on like they're promoting their books or whatever, or their films. So I've talked to some directors, are people that are just bloggers and that type. Most people are really willing to come on and talk about this material. It's not unusual.
It's good. It's not taboo or anything like. I mean, they got Netflix. It's getting.
I think it's getting less and less though for people to talk about weird shit. I mean, I think people are willing to really talk about it. I think in the past, like, I think the ghost hunting shows kind of started the ball rolling as far as like people really getting into this kind of stuff and being actually open to talk about it.
Yeah.
I think that's probably been a big boon. And then I think too, it's so much in the popular culture now.
Yeah.
Like I'll tell you one thing that's just huge right now. The biggest thing in the paranormal is Bigfoot. Like bar none. You've got all these shows finding Bigfoot and killing Bigfoot, and it's crazy. And like all these like not too far from where I am now, like up on Mont Eagle, Tennessee, there's actually a campground called Bigfoot campground. So like they're naming all this stuff. And like I think Bigfoot is like kind of like the unofficial United States mascot right now.
True.
There's even Bigfoot porn. Okay. So
what?
Yes.
There you
go. There's even Bigfoot porn.
Nice.
Interesting place.
Also on Laserdisc.
What's that?
Also on Laserdisc.
Also on Laserdisc.
And also on Laserdisc.
Yeah, it could be. It could be. It should be on Laserdisc.
Regular CD is not big enough. It's got to be.
So, interesting place to go for anybody that's in Georgia, which I'm sure a lot of people that have been part of this tonight and today and tomorrow is Expedition Bigfoot. You guys should go check that out. It's in Blue Ridge, Georgia. It is a museum dedicated entirely to Bigfoot. They even have Bigfoot turds. It's amazing.
What? Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that like a candy?
See, you missed that. You should have come with me that day to go, man.
I missed out in life if I missed out on Bigfoot turds.
Yeah.
I really hope that candy at the end of it that they give you, like nougat. There you go. Don't forget a Bigfoot turd.
One day before it's over. One day when COVID is finally done, we should go back to that. We should go to Expedition Bigfoot.
Pandemic needs to end so I can eat a Bigfoot turd, man. I'm tired of this.
Yeah. Had a question. Any thoughts on Stanton Friedman? So, yeah, I mean, I think Stanton Friedman was pretty legit. I think he was a pretty legit researcher. He really knew what he was talking about. Stanton Friedman was probably the foremost UFO researcher. He actually helped to break the whole the Roswell incident. He's on the other side of the fence than I am. Obviously, he's an extraterrestrial hypothesis guy through and through. But I think he really was a pretty honest dude. He really knew what he was talking about. I mean, incredibly smart man. I mean, he worked on nuclear aircraft, for God's sakes. So, yeah, it's all pretty cool, man. It's all pretty cool stuff to talk about, for sure.
I think so too. It's an interesting podcast you have, for sure. It's a good show you have. It's big reality. Really cool.
Yeah. We have, like I said, guys, we got like 20 speakers, man. 21 speakers actually, and we're going to be talking about several different things. You guys won't see me as much, pretty much introducing it, but we're going to be in the background, and you guys should come check it out, including people that are in the Atlanta, Georgia area. So we've got that going on.
It's a good experience for sure. So you'll learn something for sure, and you'll be entertained. So there you go.
Yes, sir. You will be.
Do we have any more questions?
You're going to be entertained by this guy right here on Sunday. He's going to entertain you with his slapping. We did it last year, right? Back at last October, and it was, I think, the only paranormal conference that I know that had some guy dressed up like Macho Man Randy Savage.
Now that's disappointing.
Yeah, the question is this just a virtual conference this year? Yes, it is. Just a virtual conference. We hope that next year, when things get better, that we're going to kind of be doing a hybrid kind of conference next year. So, yeah, this year, guys, come check it out, strangerealitiesconference.com. You can actually, when you buy the ticket, you will actually get a link to a private Facebook group that we will put you in, and all the presentations will be available for a while, so you guys can go. You don't feel like you had to be there at the time to watch them, even though we'd love it to have everybody there and kind of interact with everyone. So yeah, $20, man. Come hang out with us the weekend of September 25th, 26th, and 27th.
Yeah, you can't beat that. It really is. It's 3 days. It's pretty incredible. It really is.
Bang for your buck, man. Bang for your buck. So, and my podcast, Conspirinormal, you can find us at www.conspirinormal.com. We are everywhere that podcasts are. We're on iTunes. We're on Stitcher. We're on Spotify. We're everywhere, so you guys can find us. You can see it in the background, Conspirinormal with an I. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in, and thank Jason for letting me do this on the Jammin for Zach group. And also, guys, so the go look at go support the cause that Jason is doing.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, and definitely check out Conspirinormal. Strange Reality is going to be awesome. And yeah, Jammin for Zach. We'll be doing it all day tomorrow too. So starting at 11:30 a.m. until 10 at night. A bunch of wonderful music, stand-up comedy. We've got an author tomorrow. So yeah, we'll be a little bit smarter tomorrow, all of us. All right.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. And we hope you guys can come hang out with us in a few weeks at the Strange Realities Conference.
Oh yeah. Love y'all. Everybody
Oh yeah.
Yeah.